Good morning and welcome to The Point. It is Monday, November 2nd, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, those of you watching on GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20, the website www.gbn.gd, and those of you listening to Classic 105.5, 105.9. This morning we are going further afield, overseas, but how it affects us here in the Caribbean. We're looking at the U.S. elections, which are scheduled for tomorrow, God willing, and how it will affect the Caribbean, by extension, Grenada. This morning, I have joining us is a former aide to former Prime Minister Tillman Thomas, author, consultant, and columnist and journalist, founder and CEO of the Hopkins Consulting Group. He's also a community organizer and consultant, coordinating facilitator, and co-host at After Work Networking Wednesdays in Brooklyn, as well as an active member of the diaspora, Mr. Gerry Hopkin. Good morning, Mr. Hopkin.
Listen, good morning to you, Blossom, and to all of your listeners and viewers.
Thank you so much for sparing some time with us this morning. I know you're, not 100%, but I'm grateful that you can spare us some time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I am happy that I can make the exception, I might say, and to do something that I consider to be worthwhile.
Thank you so much. So we're going to get right into it tomorrow, God willing. Well, for the past few weeks, Americans have been casting their ballots in the 2020 U.S. election between the incumbent, President Donald Trump, and former Vice President Joe Biden. And while we are saying, that's U.S. elections, we have to take into stock that this could definitely have an effect on the Caribbean. So let's first of all look at the two candidates before we zero in on how the outcome of the elections will affect the Caribbean. Talk to us from your point of view, being in the U.S., how President Trump and Mr. Biden compare to each other, really.
Well, of course, we know that Biden is a Democrat, and he's seen as a centrist Democrat, one who's trying to bring a unifier, one who's trying to bring Americans together. And Donald Trump has been seen as, but he is a Republican candidate, but even amongst Republicans, several take exception to his approach to doing things. He has already said that if he loses the election, he will not necessarily accept the results. He's talking about the election being rigged. He's been involved in what many consider to be voter suppression. He's been, in some ways, de-democratization. He's involved in the de-democratization of America, some have been saying. For example, some of his policies with respect to making sure that every vote gets counted. It hasn't really been advocating for that. He's been trying to limit that in many ways. Also, several Americans who are labeled as white supremacists have been emboldened by some of his policies and some of the things that he has said with respect to their actions. So we have two candidates that definitely starkly different, and in terms of well, we know that Biden was also vice president for Barack Obama previously, and we also know that Trump is one who has been trying to change everything that Obama did during his presidency. So they are set for battle. The battle is ongoing in the polling stations. In-person voting has been happening. It ended 2 days ago. We are waiting for, it ended on Sunday. Now we are waiting for the final day of elections, and the count is on, you may say. But the big count would be on election day and would continue. The ballots that have been cast by mail will not be counted until after the ballots are cast on Tuesday. So the result will be available immediately. And so many people have come out and voted early this time around that there would be lots of votes to be counted even after election day. So with a president saying things like he's going to call, he's going to make the call on the day of the election and use the court system to try to stop the counting of ballots that were cast by mail and others that from absentee voters, that could cause some problems too. And we know, of course, that this president strategically is well positioned to have the favor of the U.S. Supreme Court because he has already stacked the court, you may say, with conservative justices who would tend to make rulings or decisions in his favor. So it's really some situation that fingers are crossed on. A lot of us are praying that good reason would prevail and fairness would prevail, and that there would be no chaos or disturbance at the polling stations. We are really praying for peace as we approach Tuesday.
How would the triple-lung effect for the Caribbean differ compared to which candidate wins? If Donald Trump wins the election, what can Caribbean residents, countries expect compared to if Mr. Biden wins?
If you don't mind, repeat the question. The first part of the question I didn't hear.
Sure, no problem. How would the effects for the Caribbean, how would they differ according to which candidate wins the election?
No, that is, first of all, we need some perspective on this. In recent times, Republicans have actually done more for the Caribbean and for immigrants than have Democrats. If you look at, but Donald Trump is the exception. Past Republicans from Reagan, not including his involvement in terms of military interventions and so on. Ronald Reagan and the Bushes have done a tremendous amount in terms of amnesty programs for immigrants and in regularizing the path to in setting apart and trying to create a path to regularization or legalization for immigrants, undocumented immigrants. Whereas recent Democratic administrations in America have deported more Caribbean Americans and others from the Southern Hemisphere than have any Republican administration in recent times, not including with Trump being the exception. For example, it was under Bill Clinton that we saw the end of some of the amnesty programs that we had, and Obama deported even more than under the Obama administration. We had even more deportations than we had under any previous administration. Yes, he did some good, but that is part of the negative record. Donald Trump, on the other hand, his policies have been retrogressive. Generally, his policies include, for example, what he's doing at the southern border with Mexico, not allowing asylum applicants to have their day in court, having them to wait outside of the U.S., detain and deport, separating children from their parents. He tried to push forward a policy to prevent any immigrant who in any way benefited from any social program, whether food stamps or housing assistance or Medicaid assistance, they will be ineligible to apply for a green card or citizenship. They tried to push that through in 2019. Fortunately, the federal courts didn't allow it to go through, but you could bet your bottom dollar he's going to be coming back with that in 2020. Know that he has the courts more stacked, and know that he has no other election to look forward to, because this would be second term, and U.S. presidents are term limited, and so they tend to do a lot of the things they didn't get to do in their first term. They do it in a kind of don't care attitude in their second term. So the immigration policies of the Donald Trump administration has thus far not been very caring or helpful for immigrants, especially from poor immigrants, from low-skilled, low-income especially from the Southern Hemisphere, the Caribbean, Africa, India, South America, and Central America. Whereas, and he has said it, whereas, I mean, his preferred immigrants are those who come from Europe. And his policies have shown it, and he has actually said it. So we have that difference to compete with. Whereas Biden, even if he chose the old line of the Democratic Party, I think he would have a lot of pressure from those who are rallying behind him now to do better than Trump has done for immigrants and to deliver on a path to regularization of people's status, those who are here, those who are undocumented. I mean, many of them, the ones who came here as youths, as children through the DACA program, who are looking for a path to legalization and who have been contributing. The thing about it, West Indians contribute, Caribbean Americans contribute. We work, we pay taxes. Even those who are undocumented are paying taxes. So that is why so many are advocating for a path to legalization and not to just treat immigrants as if they are aliens, outcasts, and are not doing anything to make America what it is today. So I really do believe that if Donald Trump is reelected, that he would continue to do what he has already begun doing, and that he would make life miserable and more difficult for immigrants and for minorities on a whole in this country. Whereas a Biden administration would look to ensure that there is a clear path to regularization of status. And Donald Trump would also limit the quotas of visas. So people who are wanting to travel to the US would find it more difficult coming from the Southern Hemisphere. You would find fewer people allowed visas. It has already begun, and it will continue. Whereas that is not something that the Democratic administrations have been known to do too much of. Whereas Trump is very open and blatant about his policy to ensure that this is how he would do things. So we do not have a favorable forecast as far as having a Donald Trump administration in office for immigrants, and how that will impact West Indians in terms of remittances. You know, we in Grenada and in the rest of the Caribbean, we depend so heavily on the remittances, the barrels, you know, what happens when our folks visit and bring the gifts and everything else. Some of our families, especially during these COVID-19 times, depend almost entirely on the remittances, the monies they get from Western Union and MoneyGram and the barrels that they receive. Now, if Trump wins again and some of the policies that he has in mind are implemented, it would make life much more difficult for those who are in the diaspora in the US, who are not documented but are working and sending monies home, and even those who are documented would have difficulties in some ways, because many of Donald Trump's policies have been tough on minorities on a whole, and minorities including Caribbean Americans. So anything that affects the working man or woman in the diaspora will affect families that are dependent on them and the remittances, and our economies will suffer as well. You know, remittances figure to a great extent in our GDP back in Grenada and elsewhere. So folks at home who are listening to this broadcast, I hope that they would ensure that their relatives in New York aren't too caught up in the everyday life affairs, and that they are really paying attention to the elections, and they are going to go and vote and make the right vote.
While, you know, residents, both Caribbean Americans, Caribbean nationals in the region should be on the alert, I think the direct communication between the U.S. and the Caribbean deals with the heads of state and our heads of state here in the region. So as Caribbean leaders, prime ministers, there are a few countries with presidents. What should they be prepared to do depending on the outcome of tomorrow's elections, or the final day of elections tomorrow?
Well, part of it is what they should have been doing that they have not been doing sufficiently. And what they in response to your question, the other part of it is what they should continue doing and what they should be doing. I think that when I look at the regional bodies, OECS, vis-a-vis CARICOM. I think the OECS has been more effective as a collective, as a body, in organizing itself and getting things done. And if CARICOM is not going to take the lead, maybe the OECS should act independent of CARICOM and approach as a collective body the U.S. State Department and begin to negotiate and on terms that are favorable to our peoples in the region. For example, they need to be talking about how we deal with deportees. Have a workable plan so that when folks are deported from the U.S., what happens with them when they arrive in the region? We need some kind of support from the U.S. in handling and dealing with that situation, handling that problem. We also need more support from the U.S. in terms of, we need more talks with the U.S. about how we must deal with issues such as sustainable development and the tapping of our natural energy sources, wind, solar, marine, thermal in the region. I think we can get help through USAID programs more than we have and other programs to address that. Of course, when you have a president who doesn't really believe that global warming is an issue, the whole issue of climate change, and who is trying to get out of various collaborative agreements that help to protect the environment and that are leaning towards increasing use of natural energy as opposed to fossil energy. We may not be able to expect too much in happening positively in that direction. However, it would be in our favor and our advantage to advocate and to negotiate terms and to push the issue with a future leader, whoever that may be, that we because it means more to small island states. What's happening with climate change affects us. It has a very negative effect on smaller islands in terms of the rising of the sea level and what it's doing to our coastal regions, threats of tsunamis and torrential rainfall, what that can do to a small island state such as Grenada. So the use of energy, the cost of it to be in is something too that we have to be worried about. And I think collectively, we need to be negotiating with the U.S. more on those issues than we have in the past. Also, healthcare. We need more collaboration in that area and to arrange for example, for the U.S. to allow for, and that should happen with government to government and private sector to private sector. We should be negotiating for U.S. insurance policies to be honored in Grenada and in the Caribbean, so that more of our retiring citizens can to facilitate their return to Grenada, so that they can invest in Grenada as well, and they can feel secure that when they come to Grenada, their healthcare will be taken care of, and that we would have the doctors who would be paid by the insurance to take care of them. Of course, that would mean also that we need to upgrade our system of healthcare, delivery of healthcare in Grenada, and that is where a teaching hospital comes into play. SGU would have a role to play there as a teaching hospital and most specialists on the island. So there's some work that we need to do in the region, but I think we also need to be talking to the US about how they can help us to do that and show them that what we are prepared to do. Show them a plan. Don't just go with our hands stretched out asking for help. Come up with a plan and present the plan and negotiate something that's mutually beneficial for the region, for Grenada and the region, and that the US would have an interest in as well. So the main areas: sustainable development, especially in the area of energy, natural energy, restorable energy, healthcare, collaborations, dealing with our deportees and having re-entry programs for them, so they're not just let go here, and many of them, when they return, they have nowhere to go to. Their families are not really accepting of them, and they end up causing, creating a following and spreading the lifestyle that they acquired or adopted in the U.S. back in Grenada or elsewhere in the Caribbean. And so we need to have ways and means of handling that. And I don't think our our systems back home in terms of policing, in terms of dealing with folks who need rehabilitation is adequate to address the needs of deportees who have a violent criminal history. And we need that help, and we need to negotiate that. Trade also is something that we should be negotiating more. We keep referring to the Caribbean Basin Initiative from decades ago. We need to revisit that. We need to look at new, updated, relevant ways and means of facilitating real trade between Grenada and between the region and North America, the US. So our leaders, it is incumbent on them. It is their responsibility to do that. But the private sector has to do its part, chamber to chamber, from the Caribbean to the US, to make sure that we forge a way to ensure that we have real development going forward, regardless of who wins the election. We need to do all of that. But of course, I think we would have more, we would find it working to our advantage on some of these issues with a Biden administration, more so than with a Trump administration, especially when it relates to some issues issues, for example, on climate change and things that may benefit our people to a great extent. Because remember, for Donald Trump, it's all about America. Make America great again. And it's not about other people's interests as much as it is about America's interests. Whereas I think Biden has an approach that acknowledges that America as a world leader has to work with partners and has to build relationships and maintain relationships, which Trump hasn't done very well, except for a couple of dictators that he's become very close to. So there's work to be done. And we need to be doing the work regardless of who wins. But in the meantime, between today and tomorrow, we need to ensure that all our relatives abroad, our relatives in the diaspora, are taking this election seriously, and that they're all going to go out there and cast that vote for the right person.
What about security? Are there chances for increased security policies for travel in and out of the U.S. that would affect the Caribbean?
Well, the security coming out of the U.S., generally security is always an issue, but security as it relates to safety on an aircraft with respect to possible terrorist acts, that would always be a concern. I don't know if your question is addressing it from that angle, but I think regardless of who wins, that would be a concern. Homeland Security would have its role to play there, and U.S. security services would have their role to play there. And that will be done regardless of who wins the election. And of course, Caribbean governments, Grenada included, we have a responsibility to play to in ensuring that folks who get on any airline is properly screened and safe to go there. So I think that would continue as usual. I think where we're going to see some changes, depending on who wins the election, is in terms of quotas, number of visas being made available, and access to that, in terms of USAID programs, initiatives, the kind of assistance that's been given, and nations would be, what our individual countries do, what our prime ministers say and do, what our governments say and do have always been of concern to the U.S. State Department in terms of how they deliver aid and other assistance programs. But I think under the Donald Trump administration, there will be even more scrutiny, because he's very, in a way, and I'm going to say it like it is, he's very vindictive. I mean, he pays attention and is very obsessive about that. And if you don't do things his way, it doesn't matter if what you're doing is legal or conforms to what is okay under U.S. law. It has to be his way or no way at all. And so our leaders in the region, especially in that second term, when he has no another election to look forward to, he's just going to have his way, basically. And all the things he didn't get to do in his first term is what's going to happen then. So I think the repercussions that can be negative and detrimental to us would be exponentially increased with a second term for Donald Trump. Whereas Biden would pretty much toe the line. You know, he may not make too many major changes, especially coming in as a centrist, telling Americans and trying to win some of the Republican votes and the independents. He's promising them that he would bring the country together, that he's not a socialist. He's not a socialist Democrat. He's just your run-of-the-mill Democrat, and he's putting America first. So I don't think he's going to do anything radical, but he's certainly going to have to look out for immigrants, because immigrants are figuring in a major way in this election, and they are throwing their support behind Biden to a great extent, and he's going to have to deliver early on. And folks wouldn't allow what happened with Obama to happen again with Biden. Obama had promised much in terms of to make changes that would positively impact the lives of immigrants in North America. And he did hardly anything in his first term because of some of the resistance he was getting from Congress, that too. But he did not even make the effort to do a lot of it. He was just waiting, and then he waited for the second term, and it was too late. And by then, the Republicans had the upper hand in the Senate especially, and he couldn't get much done. He tried to do a few things by executive order, which this president, the current president, has been doing quite a bit of, using executive orders to, that is where you don't have to wait for a bill to be introduced and go through the processes in the House of Representatives and the Senate of the U.S. You do it executively from the White House. You cannot do that in every area, but you can do it in a lot of different areas and get away with it. And Trump has been doing that. Obama tried to do that in his second term, but was too little too late. So I think Biden is going to have to do it early. Whatever changes he has to make, especially to ensure that immigrants can go to work without having to be looking over their shoulders, and that they can get on a path to regularization or legalization in the U.S. is going to have to happen early. And I'm not expecting him to decrease the quotas as Trump has been doing. And I'm not expecting him to treat the Mexicans as Trump has been treating them, especially Hispanics. I mean, he's been ridiculing Hispanics and Mexicans and treating them unfairly and inhumanely at the southern border. And that has to stop. It is in the name of humanitarian concern and justice and respect for U.S. law. I mean, a lot of the things that have been allowed by some of these federal judges that were appointed by Trump really doesn't meet constitutional muster if you really look at it reasonably under the U.S. Constitution. But they're changing the laws radically. And that is what happens when you're at the top, you have a Supreme Court that would vote however you want them to vote, because you've stacked it. You've gotten your people in there. The 9 justices, of the 9 justices now, 6 of them are pretty much going to vote however Trump wants them to, almost. And that is not the way it is supposed to work, but that's the way it seems to be working right now.
Wow. Let's take a quick break, Mr. Hopkin, and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion. We're speaking with Gerry Hopkin about the U.S. elections, which end tomorrow, God willing, and how it will affect the Caribbean. This is To The Point, Classic and GBN. We'll be right back.
You've spoken, we have heard. Now we're making more time available for your evening primetime shows on K105. From Monday, July 6th, Your Law will air from 6 to 7 p.m. On Tuesdays, Simply Agriculture. And on Wednesdays, join discussions on constitution reform in partnership with Island Media. At 5:55 p.m., we bring you news headlines, a capsule on local, regional, and international events, followed by news at 7 via simulcast with GBN Television. Join Godfrey Augustine for stimulating discussions on Release It from 8 p.m. on Wednesdays and Thursdays. GBN's K105.5 and 105.9. We're with you everywhere and anywhere. If you're on the move, catch us online at www.gbn.gd.
Sneezes spread diseases. So cover coughs and sneezes, please. Not with a rag or bandana. They trap germs. When you use the rag again, you put germs on your hands and everything else you touch. When you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth and nose with tissue. Throw the tissue in a bin and wash your hands afterwards. If you don't have a tissue, cough into your sleeve or elbow. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers are also effective in cleaning hands.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with Gerry Hopkin in relation to the U.S. elections and how it will affect the Caribbean. Before we go to our viewers and listeners, Mr. Hopkin, about the diaspora, what role does the diaspora play in these elections? How important is it? And do you have an idea of how many, well, you may not have exact figures, but how many Caribbean voters, Caribbean American voters that are registered to participate in the U.S. elections?
Well, until this current census, which I played an active part in encouraging folks to go out there and to complete the census, I had an initiative, Census Awareness 2020, that I organized and facilitated and promoted. And until this 2020 census, we really didn't have a way to track and to tally the number of Caribbean Americans that are actually voting, because you didn't really get to indicate that in the form. However, this census, 2020 census, they allowed for that to happen. So you can identify as a Caribbean American, and then you can state your country that you're from, so that in going forward, we would have a sense of exactly how many Caribbean Americans we have around in the diaspora, and how many are registered voters as well. So that would give us a sense of where we are in terms of numbers. But many statisticians and other experts have based on their surveys and polls and studies, are telling us that, for example, in the case of Grenada, we have over 100,000 Grenadian Americans in North America, and so we may have more Grenadians alive in North America than we have on island, and that is true for many of the other islands. So there are lots of us. They are putting it in the millions in New York City alone. Some experts say we have about over 3 million Caribbean Americans in tri-state area. So there are lots of us. And the reason why, for example, we having an interview, a discussion like this one, is because there are so many of us here, but we have a say, and we do impact what happens back home. So many people depend on us. We have made major contributions to life in North America. In the civil rights movement, we've been there, from Harry Belafonte to Malcolm X, his mother was Grenadian, to Kwame Ture or Stokely Carmichael, Trinidadian. There are many West Indians who have contributed to helping minorities, Black Americans, and Americans in general to have civil rights that respect the contributions and the rights of everyone in this country. So we've played a major role in building this country. Of course, we don't even have to go as far back as the slaves, whose cousins were in the Caribbean. Some were left there and some were brought here, and who made America the great country that it has become. The free labor that they provided to build the wealth, the cities, the economy of this great nation. So we have played our role throughout. And today we continue to play the role, not just in terms of the development, that nation building that we contribute to in North America, but we also do the same thing for home countries in the region. We send the remittances, we send the barrels, we send the school books, the this, the that, and we visit, and when we visit, we bring more gifts. So and recognizing that, in 2008, we launched a diaspora initiative where we had these conferences and symposiums and try to get sensitized folks to the importance of being organized as a diaspora community and tapping into that for the transfer of technology, for knowledge, capital, ideas, investments, and all of that. We even set up a diaspora affairs office. For a while, temporarily, I served temporarily as the ambassador for the diaspora while we were awaiting the installment of Miss Ingrid Jackson when she was the ambassador to the diaspora. And it's something that I've been involved with from its inception in 2008. And for a while, we didn't really do much about it. But I'm happy that recently I've heard more talk of the reactivation of this initiative because Grenada was leading the way amongst Caribbean countries in North America and the diaspora as far as tapping into this and developing this. Jamaica is now leading the way. But I hope that we will soon catch up with Jamaica and the other islands in the region that have been pushing for organizing our diaspora communities and ensuring that our governments back home and our peoples back home can tap into that and benefit from that in a systematic way so that we can really take advantage of the resources that folks in the diaspora have to offer. Something that we have not been doing, and I hope we really will start doing it soon, is making better use of, for example, GIDC, the Industrial Development Corporation. They have all these initiatives. People have come to them with projects that they would like to start in Grenada. They've done the market surveys, they've done the viability studies and all of that, the costing and all of that. But some of them just didn't have the money to implement the projects, and they're just sitting there as ideas. What I hope the Diaspora Affairs Office can do is take these projects that just turnkey projects that are just sitting there and have small, medium-sized, large, tailor it and make it available by publication, maybe on a quarterly basis, to all folks in the diaspora and say, look here, if you want to retire and come back to Grenada or invest in Grenada, or here are projects you can do. We have already done the market surveys. The country is ready for this kind of development. This is what we need to take us to the next step, to increase productivity and to create jobs and employment for our people. If you're really interested, this is something you can jump on to and just, it's all the preliminary work is done for you. We will help you, we'll facilitate and help you to make it happen. We need to be doing that in diaspora affairs. But I'm not seeing that. I'm not hearing that. We started in that direction and we need to develop in that manner. And until we are organized to that extent, we just will be talking diaspora and really not reaping the benefits of such a program.
At this point in the program, we're going to invite our viewers and listeners who may have questions for Mr. Hopkin in relation to the effects the Caribbean can face in the wake of the U.S. elections scheduled for tomorrow, God willing. The landline number is 435-2041. That's also the WhatsApp number. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. You can also post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. I am going to first start with a question on the YouTube that asks, what are your feelings about the election base and what are you hearing on the ground in relation to who you think may win the election?
Wow. I mean, I know who I would like to win, but it's going to be a close election. Honestly, it will be a close election because folks are looking, generally, when you see a lot of early voting and a large voter turnout, incumbents tend to tremble. They tend to worry because that normally is a reflection that whoever's challenging the incumbent might be at an advantage. However, in this context, given what's happening in America today, that may not necessarily be the case. We have to remember, the majority of registered voters in this country are white, okay? 69% of registered voters are white. Donald Trump has appealed to the racist sentiments of many who are looking for somebody to blame for their situation in life. The folks who have not been doing well, because remember, America was in a depression. Had an economic downturn that Obama inherited in 2008, and he took the country out of that with himself and Biden in their two terms. And that trajectory continued with Donald Trump in terms of lifting the country out of economic stress. However, many white Americans were looking for someone to blame for their plight. And Donald Trump did just that. He blamed it on immigrants and he blamed it on minorities. And a lot of folks who are, you may say, closet racists or people who are prejudiced towards minorities and immigrants, know they are emboldened and they're coming out and they're registering to vote. And they're, and the Hillary Clinton in 2016 did not pay attention to that. The fact that the majority of voters in this country are still white, and they tend to be in the rural parts. They tend to be, many of them are in the South. And if you do not have a message for them, you will not have their support. Trump found a way to connect with these folks. And he went out. He went he had rallies in places that nobody even heard about before. Hillary didn't do that. Biden, to his credit, has done that. He's been going out there, he's been meeting the folks, and he's realizing that you do not only need a message for minorities, for Hispanics and Blacks and immigrants. You also need a message for the majority of Americans who are white and who are blue-collared, working class. They are the majority. They may consider themselves middle class. Many of them are below that in terms of their economic bracket, but they still like to think of themselves as middle class. And you have to have a message for them. So Biden has done that, I think. So that might be giving him an edge there. Many of the pundits and the experts on CNN and some of the other major networks are tipping the scale in favor of Biden as far as the polls and so on. But polls can be misleading. So I'm going to wait and see. All I'm going to do is caution folks, do not take anything for granted. Go out there and vote. If you have a relative in the US who's thinking, oh, well, they maybe don't need to vote because Biden seemed to have it based on what the polls are saying, do not go with that. Encourage them to go out there and cast their vote. Exercise that right. Blood was shed for it. Sweat and blood shed for it. People have died for that right. And right now we have a president in office who's doing everything he can to suppress that right and to make it impossible for folks to exercise that right. If you are in a position to exercise it, do it. And if you have a relative up there who can exercise that right, encourage them to do so.
Okay. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Miss Blossom, and how are you?
I'm good.
Miss Blossom, I must say that Mr. Hopkins is speaking very well. I must congratulate him. Now, Miss Blossom, I want to draw a couple attention to Mr. Oh, my TV. Let me take it off. Sorry. Sorry, and my apologies.
No problem. Go ahead.
No, a few things regarding helping the people from the diaspora who want to retire and come to Grenada. You talk about the GIDC. Grenadians are here and have the plans and begging, and GIDC, they're not paying them any mind. You get teachers in Grenada. We're talking about the people in America who are undocumented. As a citizen myself, I can tell you that the people in Grenada here, born and bred Grenadians, are treated like undocumented people, at least some. Look at the teachers and the nurses. Look at how many years they have been working here, and they're not documented, as I should say, for permanency and so on. Look at the help with all how we're saying we need help from America. We are getting help to some extent, but our government, whether past or present, is you do what I say, you don't do what I say. If you twist your eyes or you give a body language, you've been looked down at. So we can't really look at Trump alone. We have it right here. I'm going to make it short. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you very much, caller. Ms. Hopkins?
I hear the concern of the caller, and I guess what she's addressing, maybe she sees a need for GIDC to do more for local entrepreneurs and people who would like to start a business. And GIDC is not really a funding agency. I think that they facilitate and they help you to organize and to they walk you through the system, the process, and so on. And I know at times maybe they point you in the direction of financial aid and so on, finance that you would need to get your project going. Well, but maybe that's an area they need to build capacity in to better assist potential or prospective entrepreneurs, people who have business ideas. But that is something to be dealt with at the domestic level in Grenada. About nurses and other civil servants who aren't properly documented in the sense that they are there as contracted employees as opposed to members of the public service who can use that job as something, as collateral, you may say, so they can get a loan or from a bank and build a house or do something like that. That is something I hope we can correct. It's a problem that has been there for too long, and I hope that in due course, sooner rather than later, our government, regardless of any future government and the current one as well, would move to fix that as a problem and restore it to what it used to be. We need to treat our civil servants or teachers or nurses, and all the folks who serve in the public service. We need to treat them with more respect and ensure that they are well taken care of as citizens. So certainly I can understand where she's coming from. Here in the diaspora, immigrants, they have it tough too. And she was making a comparison, comparing those folks to undocumented immigrants here. It's kind of different though. The undocumented immigrants, the folks who come to this country to make a better life, some came with very, very little, hardly any skills, some of them, and they've made something for themselves and they continue to do so, and in the process contributing to nation building here in the US. Many are doing jobs that others won't do, other natural citizens wouldn't do. So we have to give ourselves a tap on the shoulder and work to ensure that our interests here in the diaspora are well represented, not only by Caribbean American elected officials, but also by the leaders of Caribbean states when they meet with their US counterparts. So it has to come on the ground here in America, the advocacy. And I am a known advocate for that. People like Jomani Williams, Grenadian American public advocate here in New York City, people like Yvette Clark, Congresswoman, people like Diana Richardson, elected official in the New York State Assembly. I will be running for New York City Council in November of 2021. And but I'll be doing then what I've already been doing as an unelected official. I have been out there pushing for economic empowerment of our people through business networking, through the Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce and Industry, through my after-work networking Wednesdays, where I bring business leaders together, aspiring entrepreneurs, investors, community leaders, elected officials. We come together, we share best practices, we find out who is doing what in the community, and we find ways and means to support each other. It's something I would like to also introduce to the Caribbean and in due course. But we need to do that wherever we are, whether it's in New York City, Atlanta, Houston, wherever we are in the diaspora, London, Toronto, Montreal, we as a people, and we have been doing this in many ways, but we need to be even more organized than we have been and elect more of our people to office and ensure that they represent our interests, not only as advocates unelected, but when they become elected, that the poor don't get to the heads and that they continue to represent the interests of our people.
Somebody on YouTube is asking, under which party would you be running?
I am a Democrat, okay. But I'm also registered with the Working Families Party. I've worked with the Working Families Party here in the U.S. By the way, the national director of the Working Families Party here in the U.S. is a Grenadian American. His name is Morris Mitchell. His father is Mitchell Monroe from St. George's. Michael Mitchell is known as, so you could call him Michael Monroe too. is a cousin of my stepdad, Wilfred Lewis, the deceased, may his soul rest in peace. But Maurice is a national leader of the Working Families Party, and it's a party that I've been doing a lot of activism with. And but I've traditionally, historically, I've been registered with the Republican Party, and I work with both. But generally, I'm an independent politician. I focus on issues, because there are issues, to be honest with you, that I might favor a Republican position on, take a Republican position on, depending on the issue. So I don't just vote party line. I go on issues. I'm guided by my conscience and what I consider to be fair and just.
A Facebook question: do you think the vote or stance that Grenada and other countries in the Caribbean to support Venezuela and Cuba can affect the relationship between the U.S. and the Caribbean under a Trump presidency?
Well, we know Trump has taken a strong position against Venezuela. And but money talks to Trump, and that might change depending on how things transpire. But generally, if Caribbean countries take a position that's contrary to a position that Trump would prefer, or any president for that matter, you might expect some negative repercussions. However, again, it all boils down to how you negotiate as a collective. There are going to be issues in the OAS, in the UN, and in other fora where a US president may approach Caribbean leaders and ask for their support. You have to know when that happens, how to engage them. Say, call a meeting, not just one-on-one. Call the collective. Decide on a position and then meet with the US State Department. We haven't been doing that. We like to do this one-on-one thing and try and just selfishly looking out for ourselves and not doing it as a collective. But we have more to gain when we act as a collective in the region. And that is why I'm saying if CARICOM doesn't have the cojones to do it, then the OECS should do it. But we have to start engaging the US as a collective and not, instead of an individual leader going to Washington and having an audience in the White House and coming back and boasting about it, but with very little to show for it. Because you might get a little token here and there, but you wouldn't get anything major because it's just you. But if you go there as a collective, and they know they're getting a block of votes for doing something that the Caribbean needs or the region needs, trust me, we're coming back with more. So we really have to rethink how we do things and do it based on best practices.
Mr. Hopkin, thank you very much for shedding some light and bringing this issue closer to home for us as we wait, with some of us with bated breath, for tomorrow's election. Thank you so much. I see a picture that you've already voted, yes?
Well, yes, I have, and but it's not over till it's over. And although I've voted already, I'm encouraging all of my other friends out there to go and do it, because we all need to. So my job is not yet over until the last vote is cast. And we have to remember too that a lot might happen after the vote is cast. At the closing of the polling stations, lawyers might go to work on behalf of the incumbent president. He has already threatened that he's going to be trying to stop the count. He's going to be trying to do this, do that. And his militias have been saying that it's going to be war, it's going to be civil war. And he hasn't done anything to abate that, to say this must not happen. This is not the way we do it here in America. You have a concession speech, and the electoral college will do their work. The U.S. Congress will do their work, and then you have an inauguration, and you have a new president. Easy transition. It appears as though this one might be different. I pray to God it would be like the others of the past. May God bless all of us here in North America, in the U.S. especially, and may this election be a peaceful one, a peaceful transition.
Well said. Thank you so much, Mr. Hopkin. Continue to stay safe and COVID-free. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Same to you and all of your listeners.
Thank you so much. former aide to Prime Minister Tillman Thomas, as well as a journalist, author. We thank him so much for being our guest this morning as we look on at the elections in the U.S., which take place, or it ends tomorrow, God willing, between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Let's see how it will turn out. And thank you, our viewers and listeners, for tuning into this morning's To The Point. That's the end of my time today. Before I sign out, just a few things to be aware of. This morning, following the heavy rains, I saw flooding at the Balthazar Bridge in the big parish. The river has overflown its banks, so be mindful of that. I've seen flooding in the town of Grenville proper. The streets are flooded with water. I saw a notice from NAWASA, the National Water and Sewage Authority, advising that because of the heavy rains, consumers served by the Annandale Water Treatment Plant, there will be an interruption in water supply today, and that plant serves Annandale, Constantine, New Hampshire through River Road and the entire south of the island. The interruption is due to a damaged 12-inch main in Paddock area. So lots to be mindful of on this rainy Monday. And up next, this morning's Christmas Caravan with Big Joe, JC, and Janelle. Keep it locked. Thank you, guys. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, God willing. Have yourselves a safe, productive Monday.